Hi, welcome back to the Weekly Why. This week we have a double to our portion. We have Nitzavim-Vayelech, and there's a couple ideas I'd like to explain and go over with you. And I think that they're particularly relevant, especially as next week we have Rosh Hashanah starting Wednesday night. So there's definitely a lot which is key and relevant here in the parsha, and I think that's one of the reasons that it is so relevant. The parsha is that they definitely coincide, and that the rabbis who instituted this specific break in the readings every week, there's a relevance to why it's read and why it's read at any particular time. So there's a couple things I want to go over. I think that one of them is to just start the very first line of the parsha, which is in Deuteronomy chapter 29, verse 9. And so what it says here is the following. Here's Moses talking to the Jewish people, and he's basically, this is really the end. We have, we're basically 5 more chapters until the end of the parsha from here, until the end of the Torah, excuse me. So here's Moses really encapsulating the entire thing. Deuteronomy is often called the second Torah. Really, it's an encapsulation of everything we've learned so far, and it's a review. So here's what Moses says to the Jewish people. You're all standing here today before God, your God, the leaders of your tribes, your elders and your officers, every man of Israel, your young children, your women, and your convert who is within your camp, both your woodcutters and your water drawers, that you may enter the covenant of God, your God, and his oath, etc., etc. So we have, apparently here is a little bit of redundancy. We have Moses addressing seemingly a lot of different disparate groups here and saying, well, you are here standing before God, and so are you, and so are you. Well, the question is, why did he all address them individually instead of simply saying the Jewish people are all of you? So there's a few possible ideas there. One of them is that this certainly helps to hammer home the idea is that one of the ideas when we talk about Rosh Hashanah is that this is the creation of man. It's so huge, it's so overwhelming, it's almost too huge to wrap our minds around. So oftentimes we can kind of feel that, well, I'll just do my own thing, and it's just, this is about the creation of something so much bigger than me, and I can just kind of fall behind and get lost in the shuffle. So I don't really have to do anything on my own. I don't really have to, do any kind of repentance or teshuva or really have to push myself in any way, because after all, I'm just one out of 7 billion people on the planet. And so this is the idea here. I think one of the messages of this particular verse is saying, don't think that you can get lost in the shuffle, right? Don't think that you can just get ignored here because, oh yeah, every single Jew in the world, even Jews who never go to shul, they always go to Rosh Hashanah, right? So don't think that you're just going to get forgotten about here. God has an eye on you too. And so that can seem kind of scary, but at the same time it can seem very empowering, because that means every individual has their personal audience with God, which is a pretty crazy thing when you think about it on Rosh Hashanah. So the idea there, you can look at it however you want. You can look at it as scary and overwhelming, or you can look at it as a great opportunity. But in any case, what it's saying is that it's not just the Jewish people who are being looked at, or the world, it's that you individuals are being looked at too. So that's, again, hopefully we should look at it as a pretty overwhelming, sure, but pretty empowering and not hopefully scary. And so the second different perspective from talking about that, if we keep reading after Moses saying you and you and you, he's talking about all these different people, he's saying, well, what about, why are you here? What is about? What is he saying? In order to establish you this day as his people, and that he will be your God as he spoke to you and as he swore to your forefathers Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So he's saying, this is where you've built that relationship with God and as a people. And that's also the flip side, why is this so important? Because he's not just saying, well, you have a relationship with God and you have made that covenant with the Jewish people. Because individuals could say, okay, you know what, I have the covenant with God, what do I need somebody else for? But what he's saying here is that this is the idea of mutual responsibility that Jews have for one another, and ultimately the relationship the Jewish people have with God is not simply as a corporate entity, the Jewish people, but that is only made up of the individuals. So ultimately, yes, on one hand, the Jewish people have their relationship with God, but ultimately it's not really its full, let's say, fruition. It hasn't really come to its fruition unless the Jewish people are all integrated into part of that. So, if he says, well, when Moses said, the leaders of your tribes, your elders and your officers, every man of Israel, and the woodcutters, well, if there were some people are and some people aren't, it wouldn't be the same. So the lesson for us is to, especially on Rosh Hashanah, to on one hand recognize that, I have my personal responsibilities here and my personal obligations and relationship with God, that I'm not just going to get lost in the shuffle, but at the same time have that let's say, nuance here to realize, well, every single Jewish every single Jewish person has that, and I can't look at this. It was terribly destructive to look at it in the way of saying, well, as long as I have that, who the heck cares about anybody else? That obviously would be extraordinarily destructive, not just certainly the Jewish people, but just to yourselves as well, because if that's the point of this message, to say that really the Jewish people don't have a relationship with God unless we're all doing that, then that's again, we can look at that as pretty scary, but we can also look at that as pretty empowering, meaning that we can grow our own strength, our own growth, and our own relationship by helping others grow in the same way. So that's the thing that really, I think, is a take-home message from that. So the two things about this verse, when Moses breaks down every little group, there are two potential messages. One, don't think that we can get lost in the shuffle because it's about the whole Jewish people or all of humanity, is that this is about your individual too, that we have that audience with God on Rosh Hashanah, and that's kind of a crazy thing to think about. But on the other hand as well, that we need to recognize that the Jewish people have a relationship with God, and that's only valid if it's the Jewish people, not bits and pieces of that. So that's the double parsha Nitzavim-Vayelech, and this is the Weekly Why, and next week we will have Rosh Hashanah, so we'll have a very special Weekly Why at that time. So best wishes, Shabbat Shalom, and God bless.